I've had this explained to me probably 100 times, and I can tell you, I know not one small thing more now than I know the first time it was ever explained to me, which is women's hormones. This is so vexing for me to understand, and I try and I never get anywhere. Can you explain? And I think you're right on this. Like I've seen this with a lot of women. Like you can change the timing of carbohydrates for different times of the month for different results and different things. Can you explain that a little bit? I'll make sure to rewind this like 17 times and like watch it again and again and see if it sinks in.
Yeah, maybe you can get a little more precise on your question because I could go on forever about that topic. So is there like a
I'm
little
sure you could.
more? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. That's why we brought you on. Yeah. So I guess it's like you mentioned that like most your first half of the cycle, you can keep your carbohydrates fairly low and just have little pickings here and there. But then in the second half, it's better to cycle more in. And again, the amounts you're citing are very, very low of carbohydrates
Yeah, they're
and
still low.
whole ingredient, like one ingredient things, you know what I mean? Like whole food,
Mhm.
whatever. So I guess that kind of a pattern. Why is it then in part of your cycle you can and should have more? You might see more benefit from more carbohydrates, or
Okay.
others you can get away with less.
Yeah, okay. I'll do my best to keep it short. So, um, day little explanation. Day one for women's cycle is always the first day of bright red bleeding. So the first day they're bleeding, that's their day one. That begins their follicular phase. Follicular because after the bleeding's done and estrogen begins to rise, estrogen then signals FSH, LH, all those hormones. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. So it's stimulating the follicles in the ovary to prepare to release an egg. And then signals are sent for luteinizing hormone. So the women's hormones are doing this like right before ovulation, right? So period week, I always tell women like follow what you're feeling in the sense of as long as it's a positive feeling. Like don't force yourself to fast. Some people say, "Oh, that's the best time to do 36-hour, 48-hour fast." For some women, not necessarily. If women are bleeding very heavy, they can become anemic and they do need that iron repletion during that time. So they may not benefit the best. So really trust. Now, if it's telling you to go, to Dairy Queen and eat some ice cream, that's a little different. But like as far as fasting or feasting, follow the intuition in that time. And I always tell women protein, protein, protein. That's the big thing. So because bleeding is happening during that time, iron is very important. So we want to prioritize protein and beef during that time. As the bleeding ends and estrogen slowly begins to rise, I said FSH, LH are signaled as well. The body's preparing for possible pregnancy, right? Possible new life. So during that time, we want to not try to make PRs in the gym or fast too much, but you can extend it a little longer. You can go like 18 to 24-hour times during there. If the fertile window has officially opened up, and this is what I help women understand, you know your fertile window is opening because you start seeing one of your biomarkers, that's cervical mucus. Uh, and that's how you know your estrogen starting to rise. Estrogen causes mucus in the cervical crypts. So between the period and that time, that's a good time to do the longer ones if you do like longer fasts. Personally, I'm not a big fan of doing more than 24 hours, and I can get into that afterwards if you'd like. But that would be the opportune small window. Estrogen starts rising, ovulation's preparing. There's too many hormonal fluctuations. Don't go too long. 16 hours, perfectly good. You're going to get lots of benefits from 16 hours.
I like that.
Um, Ovulation happens. That's like the grand performance. Egg is released. Egg is only uh, around for 24 hours and then it's gone. So I don't know if women know that or not. Like you can get pregnant for that 24 hours. It can get open up a longer window too. Other nuanced. So once ovulation happens, somewhere in that window of right before ovulation, within like 2 to 3 hours after, is when the highest time of testosterone for women. So that's the gym part is where I say, go break your PRs during that time. Use that testosterone, build your muscle, all that stuff. You can also fast a little longer during that small window after ovulation for the next like 4 to 5 days. And that one can go longer, 24-hour kind of thing. But the big one I always tell women is that week before your period, the 7 days before. So after ovulation, progesterone is making a bell curve. It's going up, and progesterone, it's progestate, so the hormone to sustain life in the womb, is going up. And now there's a small little bump of estrogen as well. Sorry, my dog is distracting me. Get out. So the progesterone is rising up slowly. If you put too much stress on the body, it will cause depletion of progesterone. And ketosis is a stressor. It's a good stressor for most, but there are some people like myself who have residual stress from the past that I just haven't worked through yet. Or maybe stress in life right now. My son does have autism. I take care of my mom. I run my own business. There's a lot of stressors. So I have to pick and choose which of these stressors can I rid of and which can I keep. If someone didn't have a stress in the world and they lived in a beautiful countryside, raising their cows and whatever else, I would wonder if they would actually need to be kicked out of ketosis during that week before their period. Perhaps not. However, that's a minority, if even that. Most of us have other stressors. So a woman kicking herself out of ketosis during that week takes one less stress off the body and allows that progesterone to rise and fall in a gentle curve, bell curve manner. So that's kind of how I do it, and the science that I've learned behind it of why that flexing back and forth during those time periods works the best.
So part of it is understanding the science enough to like really grasp it, and another important piece is communicating it. And you just communicated that as well as I've ever heard it communicated. That makes a lot of sense. You did an amazing job, and just to appreciate that you understand it, not only like understanding the depth of the science, but also to explain it to a dummy like me. That was hands down the best explanation I've ever gotten. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey.
Very, very much. It was wonderful. We both know Jonathan Shane, and we had him on our show, and he talked about how carbohydrates can be a really good suppressor of cortisol. Is that kind of along those same lines?
Yes, because cortisol often, cortisol is, again, one of those that's always demonized. We still need cortisol to live. However, high cortisol is not what we want. We want the Goldilocks level. So cortisol is being released in a high amount when we are stressed. So for some people, if they've been in ketosis too long, I'm not sure exactly the pathway, but that is, what it helps to bring down the stress in that aspect of the cortisol. Yes. So carbs can help bring the cortisol down a little bit. And what's hard with some of my clients, I get a lot of people who have been carnivore, and I try like, can you do this? And they get so scared. Either scared, or if they've had like history of binging or, unhealthy relationship with foods, which I can totally understand. And it's not necessarily my focus, my niche per se, people who have that unhealthy addiction. I know a number of coaches. I could say, hey, go to these people. They will help you with that food addiction aspect and working through it. But yeah, it's definitely helpful. And I have had clients that they just couldn't do it and they're still struggling. And it's like, oh,